to everybody and just make yourself known, because we hope we'll see you again. Well, tonight we've got a rather interesting thing happening. I couldn't put everything on the web for what it's about, because it's all rather cosmic, and it introduces Russ. Shall I call you Raah or Osiris?
Either's fine.
Okay, him.
Hello.
It's a very special night for him, because this is the presentation which is going to introduce you to his new book, which he spent a long time, a very long time, in preparing. It brings together many, many cosmic things. You're likely to get your mind sort of blasted, so keep awareness open. The Theosophical Society introduces people to all aspects of ancient wisdom. You may have heard some of this before. I assure you it's going to be a lot deeper. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Osiris, everyone.
Welcome, everybody. I'm very, very happy to be here. Extremely excited to be here, actually, that this moment is actually happening. It's pretty bizarre for it to be happening for me, because I didn't really think it would ever actually happen. I gave up several times thinking I'd not actually finish this book, because essentially it's to do with this thing called infinity. And infinity is a very difficult thing to wrap your head around. So this is the first presentation I've ever done for my own work. So yeah, I'm excited to see what happens as well. A lot of what I talk about, I'm going to spontaneously be talking about. I might even come up with new things during the presentation. To me, it means a lot to me that this is happening in Edinburgh, because I was born in Edinburgh. So yeah, hopefully this is the beginning of something new and exciting, and I hope you enjoy it. And if you have any questions at the end, hopefully I can answer some questions as well. So to see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. One of my favourite quotes to do with infinity, and the fact that this presentation is roughly about an hour. I am hoping to fit infinity into an hour somehow. So yeah, here we go. So this picture of me here, and this is a really big tree, and then that's the top of a Mayan pyramid. And so this is probably one of the only pictures I actually took of myself when I was in Mexico when I was about 20, it was about 16 years ago. Because I was really obsessed with all the Mayan architecture and the Mayan calendar. Really, really obsessed. It was pretty much the only thing I actually thought about for that entire period of my life. Found this picture the other day, and well, it's been a long journey. I just felt like it's good to show the beginning of the journey. I was there for about seven weeks. So 7 times 7, which is the Buddhist tradition, is the Bardo, the number of the Bardo experience. And I was aware of this when I was there. I chose to be there for 7 weeks, and to me it was a death and resurrection experience, spiritually. Right. So what did I actually experience when I was in Mexico, or various other experiences I've had in my life, contemplating the mysteries of the universe? I tried to find one graphic out of all my graphics to try and start off everything with a massive cosmic wave of consciousness, because that's what all this information is about. I'm not here to convince you of absolutely anything. I'm just here sharing information, and I hope it resonates. If it does resonate, then that's great. If it doesn't, that's also cool, because you know, it's infinity out there. There's like all different versions of reality. So this graphic is basically describing the Mayan cosmogenesis from my own experience of it. The macrocosm mirroring the microcosm, the I am that I am, expressed in 13 tones, the Mayans were obsessed with 13 tones, and this is basically the art I worked on to try and encapsulate the whole thing in one graphic. It also has some codes in it, which hopefully if I manage to get through all these slides, we'll actually be able to talk to you about. But just to start off with a massive cosmic hug of the universe. There we go, cosmic hug of the universe. Right. So these are the 5 sections. Hopefully I can get through in this presentation. They all have a significance with the information that I'm going to share, and to me it starts with the heart. The heart of this information is a wish to create peace in the world. Each life is priceless and infinite in value. Therefore, the value of peace, free from war and destruction, is receiving the gift of infinity itself, to pass on in peace to future generations. This is what all of my work is about peace. That's the heart of it. To do no harm as a planet. The cover. So, where are we at now? Time flows. Time is like a wave. Ups and downs. It's not a clock. We're very used to it being a clock. But it's not. We've created clocks to try and describe time. But really, it's a wave. And we experience this. I don't really think we experience clock time, although we kind of are forced to experience clock time. I think naturally everybody experiences time as a wave, because we go through experiences which are really amazing, and then we have not so good days, and then it comes back, and you're basically surfing this wave. So that's trying to describe it from a perspective of being aware that things are always changing. One of the constants of life is change to me. And to me that's like the part of the organic heart of this information, to balance the geometric. Because the geometric seems to be the main focus. My work includes the geometries, but there's also the organic, which I think is missed far too much. So it's trying to focus on the organic. Here's another version of that. So the idea as well is that as the sun is traveling through the cosmos, we're used to seeing the idea that the orbit's like a circle, like going around like this. But the sun's actually traveling through the galaxy at the same time. So if you were to take a cross section of that and then spread it out over a period of time, we actually create a spiral through time. So that is to also focus on this idea of it being a wave. If you were to turn around and see the solar system from the side, you'd see that actually we're actually going through a wave. Cosmic geometries. Why is it 19,000 years of peace? Why 19? 19 is the number of years it takes for the sun and the moon to resynchronize with the earth year. So if you have a full moon on the winter solstice, 19 years later there'll be a full moon on the winter solstice. It is the most ancient calendar. The current calendar we use dates back to about 1582 and was institutionalized by Pope Gregory the 13th. So it's a very modern, it's a newcomer to the science of time. It's only been around for a few hundred years. The 19-year cycle is the most ancient cycle. It's like throughout the entire planet. This describes it from a multi-dimensional cube dodecahedron perspective. which then is bringing in this whole 12 and 13, which is to say it's an alchemical system. It's not just 12, and it's not just 13. It's a alchemy of both of them. So it's an alchemy of the masculine and the feminine, when you consider the 12 and 13 can archetypically represent these two values. In the graphic I made, I put the 13 in the middle with the 12 around to symbolize that we are born of woman. We're all born of woman, and generally speaking, although it's not, and there's always an exception to the rule, if you go far back in time, generally speaking, the male was seen as the protector. Not to say that there weren't female protectors or any of this kind of stuff, but man does not give birth. This is basically what this.
Yet.
Yeah. This one describes all of that in more detail. All of these graphics are in the book. This describes it from the maths perspective from 3 levels. So you have the 19 circles all spread out, so connecting with their edges. And then when you merge those 19 circles together, you get the flower of life. So according to my research, the actual origins of the flower of life is this ancient understanding of the reality that we live in. Because, I'm not making this up. If anybody was to explore the same numbers and the same geometries, they might arrange it slightly differently, but the formula would be the same. Personally, I'd love to see someone try and create differently. So to me, that's the origins of this 19-year cycle, is the flower of life. The flower of life is all over the place now. It's like really popular geometry all across the world. There's so much awareness and this ancient knowledge coming back from being tried to be wiped out. So here is an animation to describe these different levels. So you've got the 7 days of the week, which is the seed of life. And you add another 3 circles, and you get the 13-month cycle of 28 days, or the tree of life. If you add another 3 circles on each side, you then get the 19, which is one flower of life in time. So this animation is to try and to begin to introduce this idea of it being a fractal. The clock consciousness is kind of one-dimensional consciousness. It's difficult to connect it up with other levels as easily as it is with the more organic numbers, because the organic numbers fit into a growth spiral, and the 12 still has a purpose. It's not to try and exclude the 12, but mathematically speaking, from observing the reality that we live in, these natural numbers, some of which we already relate to, we already are aware of the 7-day week. We've known that for all our lives, but the 13th month is something which is new to us, apparently. Why is that? Because they tried to wipe it out. Who tried to wipe it out? Who exactly tried to wipe this out? I'd really like to know. Because here's a page from one of the appendices. So the Gregorian calendar has its roots. The Gregorian is the calendar we use today all across the world, all the financial industries, the stock markets, the military, everybody uses it on the mass scale. But it only comes from Rome. It's a Roman calendar. The 19-year cycle, well, I've yet to find a place that doesn't exist. You've got the Babylonians, the Baha'i, the Byzantines, the Chinese, even the calculation of Easter in Christianity is calculated using the 19-year cycle. I've yet to meet any of these people from any of these traditions who've ever mentioned the flower of life. Why not? Surely you know, as a planet that's trying to produce a peaceful coexistence, it would make sense to realise our similarities instead of our differences. There's evidence for this 19-year cycle going back at least 7,000 to 8,000 years. So basically, this even the that Antikythera device that they found in the Mediterranean, which is like one of the first ever pieces of technology, was based off this 19-year cycle as well. And then, if that's not enough, you find the flower of life across the entire planet. You find it in all of these places. And each of them have the iconography of the flower of life. So it's my perspective that all of these ancient cultures were aware of this information, and you know, there's different ideas of what happened, but to me the reasoning behind why this sacred geometrical pattern called the flower of life is so popular is because it describes the natural resonant frequency shape of the mathematics of our reality, based off of what the sun and the moon do with the earth, not based off of how we'd like to divide it up because it's convenient according to one particular historical group of people, you know? And so yeah, I mean, to me it's a revolution. It's a revolution because basically, from my perspective, we live in an unequal society. We have a class system, we have all these other systems, we have these political systems, we have, in fact, I don't know how many different systems we have now. Always seems to be more important to have more and more systems. But it's not based off of equality, it's based off of one particular culture's view of time. And if you look at the origins, who actually created the Roman calendar in the first place? It was called Romulus in Rome. And he dedicated the calendar to Mars, the war god. So regardless of whether even, I mean, we live in a, you know, apparently scientific based reality, okay, well, even if you don't have any beliefs, you're still using a calendar that was dedicated to Mars. So even if you're someone who doesn't believe in spirits or the archetype of energy that something, when a seed is planted, what's its intent? You know, before I came here, there would be meditation on what was my intent. And my intent was to be as coherent as possible and hopefully to express something that resonates. That's basically it. Just yesterday I added these two knives in here because this is the second part. The heart of the presentation is this 19-year cycle. So what's the sword? What's the heart is the cup. What's the sword? Well, this is the sword. You know, we have a calendar of war, and it's dull and blunt and inaccurate. You know, we have all these sharp knives. They're extremely precise. There's a science that goes into creating particular metals and certain frequencies and ratios for a reason, because it's a science. The 13-month calendar is like a sharp knife. If you wanted to go outdoors and survive, and you could only take 5 items with you, and you had access to both these kinds of knives, would you, if you're trying to survive and your life depended on it, would you take the dull and blunt knife, or would you take the sharp knife? So this is the literally what cuts through, you know, the energies of this whole thing. I mean, it's like, what is this heart of 19-year cycle? What is it up against? Well, this is what it's up against. You know, I don't mean any disrespect to anybody who lives in Rome or the Roman Peninsula, because I believe folk are free to live their own traditions. But we don't live in Rome. And the planet certainly doesn't live in Rome. So why? This is why I added the knives, to try and, like, you know, bring another level to it, because it's basically, these are mandalas, and they're trying to describe a frequency, like if you were to draw a mandala. You know, what is the frequency and intent behind the mandala? What is the reason for actually the creation of the mandala? Of time. So these are mandalas of time. But the purpose is unity, and you know, you're staring up at the stars. I mean, surely if we just go all the world leaders to go hang out together on a mountain, stare up at the stars, surely that would be enough. What's the actual reason? But here's the other problem with what we're talking about. All of these different groups across the entire planet. The Vatican, with the Vatican piece in Peter's Square, the Pentagon in Virginia, the cube, the six-sided cube of Mecca, the ancient pantheon of the Greeks. All of these traditions use geometry. This building has been created with geometry. And the reason for this is because buildings stand up and stay up longer when they're created with a science, with measurement, with understanding of the relationships between ratios. You know? And here are all these massive organizations with billions, cash ruled trillions even. And here they are with their perfectly geometrically aligned squares, temples, and all the rest of it. Where is the precision? Why is the precision missed? Why is it only on the time level that precision is sort of skipped over? Because really, the music of reality and creation is resonance. You know, everybody likes different kinds of music. When you turn the music on, when the music hits, you feel no pain. You know? It's one of my favorite sayings. Why is that? Is it because of the resonant frequencies of the music that we're listening to actually connects with us? We can feel it, it's transcendental. Even the keyboard itself, using these ratios of frequencies, produces the same numbers. It's literally the music that we create. We're like playing a multi-dimensional instrument, essentially. So here you have the 7, the 12, and the 13, the 19 and the 24. When you look at a guitar, is it Pythagoras? I'm not entirely sure. But if you've got a guitar and you've got it tuned, and you can even use this to tune it, these specific precise points on the string, if you just rest your finger on the string, you produce harmonics. Yeah? Like, these harmonics do not exist when you're not precise. They only exist when you're exactly precise with where you are playing. Yeah? And like I say, you can tune guitars using this. It was probably one of the first things I learned about guitars. But this was added in last minute yesterday as well. Because I was like, oh, that'll work. That's a good one. So there you go. Precision. The precision of being in tune with reality. From an engineering perspective, I ride a bike. I don't know if anybody else rides bikes. They're very ecological. If you were to create a bicycle wheel where the spokes weren't evenly spaced, what you get is a buckled wheel. Your wheel would just basically, after you rode it for long enough, eventually the wheel would just buckle so much you wouldn't be able to ride a bike anymore. So I mean, I sent this to my Uncle Tom, who's an engineer. I haven't heard back from him. But I asked him, well, is this true or false? You know? To me, it makes complete sense because I've ridden the bike for so long. I know that you need a perfectly circular wheel for it to work. There's more to the numbers than that, but I'll probably just go off on tangents if I go into it. Here's another animation to describe this, essentially this division in time. You know, on the right hand side you have the 13 perfectly spaced spokes, and as you can see, it's pulsing. It has a common centre and it's pulsing. On the left hand side, it's wobbling over itself. It's not completely broken, it still works. You know, our society wouldn't even exist if it didn't work at all. It does work, it's a wheel, but it's going to get buckled. You know, if you think about it from another perspective, historically speaking, every empire in history has only lasted about 400 years. That's the average. Every single empire. All of them have gone through one of these massive sine waves and eventually have crumbled because they've become too top heavy. Which takes us to the next section. Why is that? What is this planetary issue of empires crumbling? Yeah? Are we experiencing the crumbling of an empire? Just trying to fumble all over itself, trying to fix all these problems all over the world at the same time? So, some of the questions that come up to do with the calendar, even if we were all to decide to change the calendar, are we aware that we wouldn't be allowed to? Because it's not actually up to us. It's actually the Pope who decides. He's already been asked about this, he's been informed about it. There's been various events over there in Vatican. So, what do we do? You know, like, to me it's about honouring the ancestors from across the entire planet. And also it's about remembering the goddess, because the 12-sided shapes, the number 12, the ratios of the 12 is all about division. 12 can be divided by 6 and 3 and 2. 13 is a prime number. It's a very different sort of maths. Numbers have characters. 13 is a prime number. 13 times 28 perfectly fits into the year. In fact, we have this thing called a 7-day week, and 4 of those equals 28. Even the common law month in law is 28 days. So it's not like these things don't actually even aren't in our realities. They are. They're all saying to make an agreement for a year and a day. This is where does the saying come from? It comes from the 13-month calendar, because you have to have an extra day at the end to make 365. From a planetary perspective, all of these white flags indicate areas where 19-year cycle exists. The green flags symbolize places where the 13-month calendar exists. The yellow flags are geometric 12, precise 12 systems. The blue flags are more lunar, the mansions of the lunar cycle. And the red flags, well, unfortunately, all these red flags have to land on all the countries which are headed up by Yahweh traditions. So, all of the sons of Abraham. First, you have the Hebrew and the Jewish people. Before I say all this, I don't have anything against anybody or any race. I'm talking about domination here. Everybody's free to worship whoever they want, in my mind, as long as they don't harm anybody else. But these three cultures, each one of them, their calendar has absolutely no bearing on reality, and they dominate with it. The Gregorian calendar from Rome, the Jewish calendar, which is actually not actually the Jewish calendar, it's the Babylonian calendar, which they took from Babylon. The names of the Jewish calendar is actually Babylonian. It's not even their calendar. The Islamic calendar doesn't even fit with the year. It has its own weird cycle that doesn't connect with nature at all. And out of all of these cultures, it just so happens that they're all sons of Abraham. This is why I've identified them with red flags. I think there's some sort of deeper stuff there. I have this up on my wall in the flat. I'm still trying to figure out what to do with it, but it's trying to give more perspective, more background information of what this heart of 19 is about. You know, transcending our differences. You know. So here's a geometry to describe the 13 months. So, you know, we're used to always seeing things in a circle. I decided, why not? Look at it as an infinity loop. Yeah? So you have the summer months and the winter months, which is a balanced polarity. You have the more active months, the more quieter months. I mean, it's definitely unique to maybe more of our kind of climate because we experience all different seasons, you know, like other places would be slightly different. But to describe it as a tree of life in time. And it's like an entirely different matrix of time. With the chakras sort of inverted. Oh, here we go. Right. So, here's loads and loads of graphics. This is something I'm working on at the moment, which is the oracle cards. So I have like hundreds of graphics, loads of words. I have all kinds of stuff I've worked on. Somehow miraculously I now have a book now, although it's taken 19 years to write it, and I find words extremely difficult. If I could just stand here and talk to you about numbers, oh wow, it'd be great. But unfortunately, you know, you have to describe stuff with words. But I just wanted to share this with you as a form of consciousness activation. So part three is all about pyramids. You know, if a pyramid isn't built on solid foundations, or its foundations are attacked, what happens to the pyramid? It crumbles. Okay, to me the pyramid is something you connect with personally, or you can look at it as society or as a planet. And you can see the pyramid iconography all over the place, with various positions of power and this whole idea of elites and all the rest of it. But what I don't understand is if they're using this pyramid, do they not understand that if you destroy the common people, yeah, the regular folk of the world, who are essentially the base of the pyramid, if you destroy these people, or if you demonize them or use them as cannon fodder or all the rest of it, your pyramid is going to crumble. Yeah, that's essentially the message of the pyramids. And they all use these pyramid iconography. But they don't seem to be actually very clued up with the idea of how pyramids are built. Or do they know? Maybe this is part of their whole bank boom and bust cycle of the economies. So where do we actually live? Well, we live on this fractal reality. You know, we live in this fractal reality. Energy is everywhere. We are energy. The whole universe is held together with energy. It's had various different names over the years, but it is energy that holds it together. It's made up of matter, sure, but without the energy to hold it together, all that matter would turn to dust. So there's all kinds of different levels to this kind of stuff. All kinds of different levels. To identify the Gregorian calendar as a problem is no different from trying to identify the fact that we have a corrupt banking system. or that we have issues with nuclear waste, or all this GMO stuff, or the fact that basically the consciousness of the majority of people is actually manufactured through the media. I mean, there's so many different levels to this. For me, the calendar kind of holds it all together though, because time is how we all organise. In order for all of us to be here today at this precise point, we have to know the time and date. Everything is just like official documents. In order for them to become official, you need to have a signature. They also have to have a date. They go hand in hand. So this is just, I just put this one here just to try and communicate. There's so many different levels to this awareness. I am aware of a lot of these different things. All of these things interest me. But time, to me, is the one thing that unifies it all together. Because historically speaking, if you look at the resonance of the different calendars, particularly through the dedication to Mars, in my research, that is what signifies the corruption, is this obsession with war. War, and what we're all fighting over, well, you know, trade and exchange and who owes who what and all the rest of it. So we've basically got a sinking ship. We've got a sinking ship who's basically constantly taking on too much debt, numbers. Percentages of numbers added onto the bank account with little clicks on the keyboard. You know? It's all maths. And to me, when I was taught maths, I didn't really have much respect for a lot of my teachers because I didn't like the way they taught stuff. I've been good at maths ever since I was a child, naturally, in my own way. So, what do we do with this sinking ship? You know, what do we do? There's all these ideas of creating different kinds of energy. This is a bit of a conundrum. If the laws of physics state that you can't create energy out of nothing, how is it that as a planet, the entire banking financial system is essentially based off of creating something out of nothing? And why is it that that whole system was synchronistically, coincidentally created at the same time as when Tesla was alive? When they demonized Tesla and took all of his research away and destroyed his research, at the same time the Federal Reserve Act was being put in place, which is essentially the same formula of creating something out of nothing, apparently, but they've woven it into the banking system with numbers. So this one is like one of these paradoxes of how to get your head around all of this information and why am I so obsessed with numbers and balance. You know, it is about balance. You know, we all give and receive. The whole society is based off of giving and receiving. If we didn't share, our society would crumble. We pass around bits of paper which promise that we will repay what this promise is, you know, but they're just bits of paper. You know, how long does it get to the point when we get bored of passing around these bits of paper? I mean, surely there's just one promise. I promise to be part of society and just be creative in society and help society. Okay, cool. Great, well there's enough food for everybody. Funnily enough, we already waste about, what is it, 33% of all food is chucked in the bin? Or doesn't even get to the flipping people who need it because they don't have the money. Wow. What are we going to do with all these spiritualities, you know? All these different groups that have this deep wish for peace. That's the heart of every single spiritual tradition across the entire planet. Why is there not more peace? Why are we still struggling with this concept of peace? You know? It's the natural state of existence. And how are we gonna actually mathematically transcend the debt? Well, here is my formula that's taken me 20 years to create. It's in my book as well. And essentially what it says is we're all millionaires. We're millionaires from birth. Mathematically speaking, the planet is worth almost 5,000 trillion. This is based off of research by astrophysicists who take into consideration that currently this is the only planet that we know of in existence that harbours life, has a breathable atmosphere, running water, and that we can actually travel to. Maybe at some other point there'll be other planets, but it may well take us quite a while to get there. So at the moment, this is the most priceless place in existence. And mathematically speaking, it's worth loads. Really loads. Loads and loads and loads. So if you divide this 5,000 trillion roughly by the population of the planet, that is almost 500,000 each, if we were divided equally. And this includes everything. All the buildings, all the resources, all the land, the fact that there's a breathable atmosphere, all these things together, we're all 500,000 is. If you then include the fact that anybody who works throughout their life is producing energy. Currently we use bits of paper or digits on a screen to signify that value, but the true value is actually the work. The true value is the sharing, what you share in society. Over a lifetime, at even a minimum wage, anybody who works or produces or cares or does something to help in society, even on them, helping themselves, because healthy people are not, what's the word? Healthy people don't strain the system. When you have loads of unhealthy people, you have problems with the NHS. If you don't have lots of unhealthy people, there's less problems with the NHS. So demonising people is probably not a good thing. So anybody basically produces 500,000 over a lifetime of work by paying rent, paying mortgages, buying food, buying products over a lifetime. All of us naturally produce 500,000. So everybody is worth at least 500,000 if you don't even take into consideration the planet's wealth. If you just put that aside, we're still all worth 500,000. So everybody is priceless, So this equation, from my perspective, basically makes the entire hierarchical debt-based slavery economics null and void. Because it's based off of maths. I'm confident that it all adds up. I've added it up several times. It's about equality. It's about realizing just how priceless where we actually live is, And what do we do with it? How do we all share all of this understanding? It's based off of elements, Currently there's battles, for, instead of in the past you would fight, there'd be battles of who'd be king. Now we vote on who's the king. There's still a battle, there's still a winner and a loser. It's just we don't fight to decide who the winner is. This version of elementary ecopolitics is to say that everybody's a winner, everybody has a share in the understanding, and therefore a share of the economy. And therefore, the people who know how to build stuff should be in charge of the part of the economy that is to do with building stuff, because they build stuff. Some guy in a suit at the other end of the planet who has no idea how to build stuff shouldn't be in charge of building stuff. It's basic elementary politics, basically. Politics which has no understanding of energy. Because if you look at the Westminster building, it's designed to be a confrontation. You've got two sides with a guy at the back who's always constantly telling them to shut up. Why is that? Because they're constantly battling with each other. You've got the winning side and the opposing side. The whole building is designed to function in this way. So they have no understanding of energy, which is everywhere. It's the nature of every single one of our cells in our bodies. It's the nature of reality. here we have the 7 days of the week at the centre of the Tree of Life. To me, this is where Tree of Life comes from. I don't personally resonate with the Kabbalistic Tree of Life because they usually put Saturn in the top left, and that doesn't produce this geometry. Also, the other trees don't include the 12 and the 13th sphere. To me, the tree isn't balanced without the 12 and the 13th sphere. 12 and 13th sphere is to honour the masculine and the feminine, and is designed into the reality we live in by the fact that, going back to the beginning, the 19-year cycle has years of 12 and 13. So when I put these 12 and 13, when I put the 12 and 13 sphere on the Tree of Life, it just so happens that they're between the moon and the earth, which is the numbers that relate to how many moons there are per Earth year. So they're not just put there out of, oh, where will I stick the 12 and 13 sphere? No, they kind of sort of decided themselves to go there, in a sense, to complete the tree. And what is the Tree of Life? Well, the Tree of Life is the whole sequence, is the birth, life, becoming an elder, passing away, and death and resurrection. It's the nature of our entire reality, the whole vegetation cycle, all the trees, all the plants, all the flowers, everything goes through this death and rebirth. So in my awareness, so do we. I understand all this information is extremely, it can be extremely complicated, and it can be extremely difficult to wrap your head around, you know. One of the experiences of my life that's kind of the reason why I'm even doing this is because when I was a child I had a near-death experience. So that's another part of what has fueled my passion to create all this information. Obviously there's no way to prove all this kind of stuff yet. Because how do you prove something that you can't measure with the current scientific equipment? Yet. We can't do it yet. So, along with the 19-year cycle, which you can also see on the cover here, that both of them merge together, is the diamond matrix. And the diamond matrix then takes all of this information and fractally unfurls it over thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, precisely, without any sort of slip-ups, like so precisely. Yeah, it's incredibly precise. I don't know how reality and the universe managed to do it, but to me, it's the grail of this information. And again, it comes back to the heart of the beginning. What is this grail? This grail is the 33-year cycle. It's a diamond matrix based off of the leap days. So each of these smaller triangles with 3 circles and a circle within it represents a leap day sequence. So every 3 years we have a leap year. Sorry, every 4 years we have a leap year. We have 3 regular years and 1 leap year. So the central circle is the leap year. The 3 circles around it are the regular years. If you then create that into the diamond matrix and fit all the geometries together like this, you then have an extra circle in the middle, which is the 33rd, and this geometry produces the perfect mathematical ratio for the average extra 0.24242424 after the 365 in a year, to align it with nature, because nature isn't a clock. Nature has a frequency. Nature is an infinite number. If you were to try and measure precisely the length of the year, it's constantly changing. This is the average, the perfect average over 20,000 years, which is as much as the program would allow me to investigate. But it's an infinite number, you know. 365 itself is like a whole number, plus you add the decimals. If those numbers go off for infinity, it's an infinite number, which is natural, because we live in infinity. This describes the difference between using the Gregorian leap day system and the 33-year leap day system. I don't know if you've noticed that sometimes the solstice or the equinox isn't always on the 21st, sometimes it's on the 20th, sometimes it's on the 22nd, and it wobbles all over the place. Have you ever wondered why? It's because we're using the Gregorian leap day system, essentially. If we used a different one, 33 for instance, it wouldn't wander. It would be on the same day, because it would be precise. And yeah, this is information from the Persian people, so it is connected with the Middle East, which is precisely where the 33rd degree moves directly through the Middle East, right at the border between Israel and Palestine and Lebanon, through Syria, and practically directly over Baghdad. Yeah. To me, the Persian people, ancient Iran people, or any of the ancient people around there, I mean, usually whenever this part of the world's talked about, it's always Islam. Have you ever noticed that they never talk about any of the native peoples? But what about all the native peoples? Or the people that were there before the Islamic people? They're never mentioned. Which is not really strange, because we live in a reality which is a dominator reality. So here we live in a Christianized Britain, there's a Christianized America, Christianized Europe. And again, I don't have any problems with people being Christians, but the land does not belong to the religion. The land is the land. And there are many people that live on various lands that aren't just part of these megalomaniac Yahweh traditions, which seem to be battling for supremacy of the entire planet. So the reason why I bring this in here is to express some of the things which I've discovered. You know, is it a coincidence? Is it just synchronicity that this 33rd degree goes straight through all these key places, which is where the diamond 33 geometry originates? But this information isn't just Persian. In order to understand all the information I've tried to share in my book, I've had to study stuff from the Egyptians, the Peruvians, the ancient Chinese, the Taoists, Stonehenge, the Chichen Itza pyramid, all these places, Newgrange in Ireland, every single place, each temple or pyramid or burial area or whatever it is. Why is it that every single one of them are aligned to the solstice and equinox or the 4 fire festivals? Even to this day, still perfectly aligned. Just like all of the places around the world which have those geometries in them, the military-industrial complex. Why did they build it in the Pentagon? You know? So it's to me it's a planetary wisdom that together is an alchemy, and through that alchemy this book is being produced. You know? It's like, you know, this crazy alchemical operation where I'm like almost gave up several times because obviously the experiment didn't go right, you know. Eventually it manifested into reality, and you know, I still feel I'm very much at the beginning here of all this information. I'm still learning how to even present it. I've presented other information before. This is the first time I've ever even presented my own work because I've been so hesitant to actually see any of it because I didn't feel it was ready yet. You know, this I really love this. This one just completely blew me away. Has everybody heard of the Fibonacci spiral? Or the natural growth ratio, which is described as 1.618. So if you take those numbers of the first 13 numbers, starting with 0, and you place them into a mandala and see how they can fit into the natural year. One of the first keys to understanding this was the number 89, because currently the number of days between the winter solstice and the spring equinox is almost exactly 89. It's not always been 89. 5,000 years ago it would have been the previous season that was 89. But over time it rotates with the shape of the Earth's orbit. So that first key was the 89. By fitting the other numbers together, including the 0 at the centre, and then 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, which makes 12, plus the centre makes 13, and the outer numbers up to 144, you essentially get 364 days. So just like 13 times 28, the 8 plus the 13, 21, 34, 55, 89, 144, all together produce 364. Completely blew me away. I really don't understand how this all fits together. I mean, you know, do we live in a reality that's got absolutely no meaning, it was just an accident? Or is there some sort of matrix of numbers that's somehow embedded into how even our solar system and planet orbits the sun? But that's not it. That's not the end of it. That's exactly where the Mayans started their 5,125 year cycle in 3,114 BC. Yeah, that exact point where the 8 begins, so the outer circle begins, when it's fitted to the organic solstice and equinox cross, that precise day is when the Mayans began their calendar. So I mean, it's called the Fibonacci ratio, after Leonardo Fibonacci, but the Mayans knew about it thousands and thousands of years before, possibly, I don't know. I wasn't told this by a Mayan. This is something that I was fiddling with numbers and drawings and sketchings, and found this out one day. You know, I'd like to go back to Mexico one day, hopefully, maybe, who knows. See if I can meet a Mayan elder. Hopefully, talk to them about it. So this is a key. This is my key of the Infinity Codes. And the Infinity Codes key is an alchemy of the masculine and feminine, of the lines and the curves. It's not a one-sided system, it's a system which blends the two together, because without both of them, I would not have been able to write this book. I wouldn't have been able to decode all these various patterns. I wouldn't have been able to be accurate over thousands and thousands of years. So it's an alchemy, and it's key to infinity. So this is a tiny section of a spreadsheet. This covers about 2,000 years, if you include the outer bits. So the whole spreadsheet in total covers 20,000 years. At one point I had 2 screens set up. I would definitely not been able to do this research with 1 screen. Even with 2 screens it was challenging enough. If you imagine that's 2,000 and then multiply that by 10, that gives you an idea of the size of the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet, each of these levels is a 19-year cycle. So each of these dates going down gives a date 19 years apart. And each of these 19 years apart is when there's a new moon on the spring equinox. And I did this because I wanted to find the most accurate, naturally based calendar to replace the Gregorian with. And what I decided was the coolest thing was eclipses. So I went hunting. First of all I created a spreadsheet, and then I went hunting through time for eclipses on the actual equinox. And so where there's the yellow bit over the top is when you get a total solar eclipse, which is also a new moon because it's a perfect new moon, on the equinox. And bizarrely enough, last year when I released the draft edition of my book, there was a total solar eclipse on the spring equinox, visible from flipping Edinburgh and Pennycook. So I went to see it. And that's the far right, the top of the yellow box, 2015 total solar eclipse. So that was all very exciting, I just finished all this and it took me 19 years. It's a 19-year cycle. And now there's a big smiley face in the sky, because that's what it was. When the moon covered the sun, yeah? It wasn't a perfect eclipse because of the latitude where it was. There was a big smiley face. And I recorded the whole thing, and I had a laugh with my pals at the top of the hill. I was like, look, there's a big smiley face in the sky. Incomprehensible. More numbers. So here it is as a DNA sort of time wave covering 8,000 years maybe now on there. And what it shows is the leap day systems of the Mayans and the Egyptians, complete other sides of the planet. Apparently, according to history, they had no contact whatsoever. But in order for this whole pattern to work, you need both. You need both the Mayan key and the Egyptian key. To understand the whole pattern, you need both. The diagonals going one way are far more Mayan, the 1507 numbers, whereas the diagonals going the other way are Egyptian. So they both were aware of these cycles. It's not always recorded as being connected with eclipses, sometimes it is. But how is it that they have these two pieces? How is it they have these two pieces when they meant to have no contact? And why is it the two different pieces? Why is it not the same ones? And how is it that it's only these two numbers that fit into this pattern precisely and perfectly over thousands of years of time? This animation describes the entire book, basically. It's 20,000 years, geometry, showing the fractal ratio. So the law of the fractal is self-similarity across scale. Just like you have a keyboard and the octave repeats. It's the same pattern, but different octave ratio. So in the same way, the heart of this book is the 19-year cycle. In order to maintain its accuracy, you need the 33. Over this 20,000 year pattern that covers all the research of the entire book, you have 19 of the 372 eclipse matrix, which Govinda here is the local star of the mandala T-shirt here. So this is the geometry of this, and so you have the two numbers precisely over the 20,000 years on a massive fractal level is the ratio of 19 of the 372 and 33 of the 391. So when I found that, it probably fell off my chair. I mean, it's meant to be impossible to decode time, or it's meant to be impossible, I don't know whether it's impossible or not. Basic kind of view of all these different geometries. You've got like 7-day week, 19-year cycle, 33-year diamond matrix, the 52 weeks in the year, the 4 times 13, or the Metatron's cube, and various other cycles, which basically are all in the book. All these various cosmic cycles, But what's, again, it's like, all these awareness of cosmic cycles, what's the practical use is always the question. What's the practical use? The practical use is peace. The purpose of all of this work is peace, is to try and find what is the similarities, what is the harmonics of our planet. How do they fit together? And that's essentially what it's all about. Thank you very much for listening to my first ever presentation.
Brains are fully awake. And it's taken a while, but I think you will feel that you really learned something tonight. And I know that a lot of it links into Theosophy actually, but we don't deal with it from this standpoint. But there are people around, and he mentioned Tesla. I personally have a big connection because my partner, Alistair, who had unfortunately died in 2011, was working very hard on the Tesla codes, and had it not been for him getting ill, I think he would have cracked something. He was making a lot about it. I lived in the States, went to the Tesla Museum, which is in Houston, along with the space program, and I know that all through the ages, as you well know, alchemy has been behind everything. But those that don't want, the 12, if you like, do not want us to be enlightened enough. And because you all know about this, be aware that anybody who is coming up with information like this and getting right into your consciousness is in fact against the people like my friend George Osborne. Because what we're being involved in the world cycle with finance, and I was in finance at one time and suddenly realised, although I didn't understand the mechanics of it, that we were being fooled. And we are. So, those of us who know, just bear this in your consciousness. Thank you. I would love you to answer any questions if anybody's got things to ask. I'll let you deal with it.
Sarah, it's nice to see you again. Great talk. I hope you and your brother come back almost and do the other talks in the future. I would just like to pose a question. It's quite it's going to take a little slightly different angle.
Sure.
But it's well motivated. So the whole universe is operating in a very, very intricate pattern. The whole of the universe. This planet is travelling through that universe, right? With a manifestation of humans on it. My suggestion is that it's possible that the manifestation of the Gregorian calendar was part of a cosmic cycle, and that in a sense that it gave you the journey to go over to Mexico to explore the Mayan calendar, and it's given you this talk tonight. In a sense, although at the same time, from another point of view, I don't want war, and I don't want, but without, in a sense, without it, it's given the sort of frame of reference and the kind of to stimulate growth, to let us see what we don't want, if you know what I mean.
Without challenges, without challenges we don't grow. Definitely.
Yeah, in a sense, the way I'm seeing it is that it's possible that, and from the pyramid point, you posed the question about the pyramid. From a point of view of wanting to control the population, you want a quick turnover of slaves that are relatively unconscious. You don't want like a 300 or 400 year long-living population where the people are becoming conscious and aligned with the universal, which is what we want. And what will probably happen, but we just have to go through this process first. But anyway, it was great. I really enjoyed it, and a lot of work's obviously gone into it. And I really honestly, I do hope that even if you're not coming back to give your own talk, that you and your guys come back to visit other talks that are here.
Definitely. Thank you.
Nice one.
Have you found any correlations in 19-year cycles in science in relation to astronomy, say, I don't know, Sirius or some other galaxy or whatever? Do you know if there's any relationship there?
Yeah, no, I would say the 19 is more the base of our own closest reality. It's more to do with connecting with what's the closest with us, with the moon and the sun and the earth. I would say for the cosmic cycles, this one here, the 71-year cycle, or 72, depending on how you measure it, is the cosmic day. So like 1 degree of precession. So to me that's the star measurement, because the precession gives you the signs of the zodiac, the age of the zodiac, and when the transitions between the ages. When each 72, 71 years is a day. So after about 30 of those you get like a new zodiacal age. But the 19 is, there is like a couple, like recently, because there's so much more research being done and everything. Complex organic molecules. They did a microscopy image of it, and it produced the same hexagonal honeycomb-shaped matrix. But also in our neurons in the brain, in new brain research, the same pattern was found inside the neurons as the shape of what they've termed microtubules, which is about as much as I know about it, but it's the same shape. So, inside, just like we looked at atoms and thought that was the last thing, and then we looked inside the atoms and we found something else. In the same way, they're doing the same thing with the brain. I myself, in meditations, at ceremonies, I've seen various matrices and patterns. I know other people have seen them too. So to me, the fact that our brain is actually designed with the same geometries in mind, it made sense to me. But in terms of the stars, I would use a different geometry to measure the stars with.
I'm here as president of the 137 Club. I believe 137 is the most important number in the universe.
Yeah.
It's the DNA of light.
Okay.
But just a couple of points. I read that if you multiply 19.618 by 18.618, you get 365 plus a quarter. So there's the Gregorian calendar integrating with the lunar. Because if you add, I think it's 28 days onto the 365, you get 13 lunations within the calendar year. So, and just one last point, on the Tibetan plateau, to raise huge blocks of stone, the Tibetans set up this, where they had 19 musicians, 13 drummers, and I can't remember the other 6, but they also had a choir of 19, and they were able to raise through the anti-gravitational science these huge building blocks. So my view is that the pyramids were built by anti-gravitational science from people from not of this earth.
Yeah, definitely.
My final point for people here new to Theosophy, for me, Theosophy was brought to the world because it gave the prehistory, it gave the reasons why all the lines on the planet were as they were, because Blavatsky understood the prehistory, which is hitherto unknown in my view. Anyway.
I would just like to say something, because I've just returned from Dumfries House from a visit today, and actually one of the most important things in there is an astrolabe, an ancient one, and various people, astronomy and people who are very connected to ancient wisdom have created a case around it. It's absolutely phenomenal. And I've visited a lot, as I know a lot of other people have, stately homes and things like this, and you've got to keep your eyes open, because ancient wisdom and this sort of thing is encoded in an awful lot of these artifacts and things that they brought back from all over the world. And I saw some of it today and it blew my mind away, because I've seen things like this in Dumfries House, which if you don't go, you ought to. It's in Cumnock near, and it was restored, I've heard, by Prince Charles. And Prince Charles is quite intelligent on the architectural side, and he had a whole team of people, ordinary people, helping him. And I've got to go back because we've had an hour and a half tour, which was very, very full on the architecture and so on. And it all links up with what you've been talking about. So if there's any synchronicity, it's there in our culture.
Definitely. It's, you know, well, this is
But it's in plain sight, but you don't know.
Exactly, right underneath our noses.
Mention something.
Yes.
I remember in school, my maths teacher always told me maths. My maths teacher had like a calculator in his pocket, like a gun. He was like, maths is everything, it's everywhere. And I was just wondering, like, throughout your talk, I've been completely mind blasted by everything. It's been so interesting. But I was wondering why you didn't mention pi, because that's kind of infinite. And I was just wondering what your view is on that. Whoever that might go on.
Pandora's box.
Just ask and it shall be given.
Where is that one?
It just popped up in my head.
Well, it's sort of connected with pi. Yes, no, it's in the equation. I mean, it basically is to do with the circle. If you take one of the cycles of Mercury, the closest planet to the Sun, and then you multiply it by pi, you get 365, which is the same as the diameter of the wheel multiplied by pi, or r, 2r squared, those kind of stuff. So if you take it's not the orbit of Mercury, it's the synodic cycle, which is the pattern of Mercury's orbit that we see from the Earth. The number of days for that to repeat, roughly 115.8 blah de blah. If you multiply that by pi, you get 365. So it definitely is there. Usually that equation is at the bottom. It does actually have pi in it, but it's not there today. Thank you.
My view is the reason why the golden ratio was kept secret wasn't a conspiracy search. It was because Plato knew the devastation that could take place as what happened in prehistory when maybe Atlantis was down through a misunderstanding, a misuse.
Yeah.
So Plato, for me, guarded on the pain of death because he knew the consequences of this knowledge getting in the wrong hands.
Well, it's true. I mean, the graphic where you have the butter knife and the survival knife. I mean, the survival knife is extremely sharp. You don't want to be messing around with the survival knife without being aware of the fact that, well, you could harm yourself and you could harm other people more, most likely, than with a butter knife. So I would agree. There's definitely something beneath that layer, which is to do with, well, us as humans having responsibility as well with this information. Which is, I mean, you look at it, right, we've got all this technology, I mean, we can talk to each other instantaneously across the planet, we've got the world's resources at our fingertips. But there still seems to be, like a lack of consciousness. Yes, Josh?
Yeah, well, just what he was talking about, what Pythagoreans back in ancient Greece, they used to draw the pentagram on their hand as a symbol for their society, and they kept that knowledge away from the people, that mathematical knowledge of the golden spiral, the mathematical sequence of frequency. They thought that this knowledge was far too dangerous for the people of Greece to have. So again, it's kind of...
Yeah, well, this is the thing, my brother...
It's like, I was, funny enough, I was just watching some random thing on the box to procrastinate from intensive study, but this sort of idea of withholding evidence or information from culture has been done again and again for various different reasons, and even the likes of King Henry VIII and his cohorts, they didn't want to give the new Bible to the people and let them read the Gospels because it would pollute their minds. But it's like it's fear that knowledge will be misused. But how can we, how can anyone assume that someone is going to misuse knowledge? But if you've got to trust people, you've got to trust the knowledge. And I think that maybe it's a misunderstanding of requirement of having the heart open before you've got your mind open.
Yeah.
Because if you give that knowledge to someone who doesn't have their heart, you get your George Osborne.
Well, you know, in Christian thing, I mean, take what some of the sayings of Jesus were. You say, "He that has eyes to see, let him see. He that has ears to hear, let him hear." And I was just going to say, talking of the flower of life, you mentioned in your list one of the Templar stones in. You maybe haven't noticed that there is the same thing in Roslin Chapel in the crypt, on the supposed tomb of a Templar. And there was something interesting since we're on that, and I know about it a lot. There also was, and I never thought about it and said it till now, but there was in the deepest codes of the Templars, when they were prescribed on the 13th of October 1307, when they were so-called written out, but knowledge survived underground, as it always does, and there is a thing, and I haven't really been able to check it out, but there was a story that 100 years they would keep the knowledge, and there were 3 Templars who were encoded with this to pass it on only to those secret ones, to that knowledge, until such time as it should be possible to let it become more obvious. And I don't think you've noticed, but maybe you have, that the Masons are beginning to pull out some of their secrets.
Oh, there's going to be a major documentary,
Oh,
a
really?
fly on the wall into the not the Templars, the Freemasonry
Ha!
have allowed them to do a series of documentaries on Freemasonry and what it's
Fantastic.
all
Well,
about.
in a way, that's what I'm
And all the
talking
different-
about.
Just ask a point of view. You mentioned infinity.
Well, that's the-
Well,
in the process of
nature
making it.
nature needs form,
It's not-
and so it doesn't do infinity in that sense. It has to grow into a form which dissipates in time, and that's the Maya, the illusion of impermanence. So I just wondered how you tied in infinity with a space-time form,
Cycles.
if that makes sense.
By cycles. Everything is waves and
But a
cycles.
cycle,
you had
a
the
cycle's
question
not,
as
a
well.
cycle's not infinity.
Well, the way I look at it is if the ratios of the phi and pi and all the rest of it you can find in our biology, if the same hexagonal honeycomb is in the centre of our neurons, if the sun, moon and the earth produce fire alive all around us, and we're pentacled species, if you add all that stuff up together, what was it, the recent estimate? 13.7 billion years old is the universe. There's those 13 and 7 again. So, to me, the best way of understanding fractal numbers is by just moving the decimal place. So, each of these cycles, which is essentially when things realign, if they didn't realign, I don't think our planet would still be here. It wouldn't have found what's called the Goldilocks zone. It would have gone off its orbit, and then life wouldn't have happened. So,
Just in theosophy, that there is a viewpoint from the Theosophical teaching that the planet won't exist in time, in the future.
Well,
Everything
yeah, it
will
will be. Yes, we want the sun will go either red giant or something like this. Yeah. Did you have a question at the back? Because I remember you had your hand up.
It was actually just another, and when I think about it, it wasn't really a question, but I will just quickly say, last year I met a guy from Greece, I bumped into him up there, and he was an amazing guy with an amazing connection, and I only met him as a result of the economic crisis in Greece. I guess what I'm trying to say is just stressing the point that he would never have left Greece if it wasn't for the economic crisis, and I wouldn't have met him. What I'm trying to say is, I'm trying to really sort of stress the point that, and I'm being tested on this, believe me, to the max, but even if the Greek guy had been someone that had a knife at my throat, that somehow that would have been part of an unfolding of a cosmic plan, if you know what I mean. So what I'm saying is that we're focused on this, like seeing synchronicities as a particular thing, or alignments, or this is perfect and this isn't. And say is that,
Well, it's not black and white.
it's not
black and white. And then you got
I just think
the dharma and the karma. You know, in situations, you can go through extremely challenging situations, and eventually it comes down to you. Do you choose to like turn this challenging situation a reason to fold in upon yourself and give up, or do you find some sort of pearl in the situation and use that as fuel to like transcend it? You know, which is the eternal challenge of being human, I think. But then it's like, I completely on a cosmic. You can't really argue with the cosmic cycle, the cosmic
it's just that,
perspective.
you know, when you were
Yeah.
showing those pictures of the whole kind of focusing on the very intricate patterns that the rest of the universe is in. I mean, it's like flowers, and you know, it's always like, does God have a tea break?
We're talking of tea breaks.
It was on when he made all
Yeah,
this.
shall we?
Tea break.
Before that,
He got distracted by the biscuits.
I'd like you to say thank you so much to Raah. But before you do that, I would like you to know that he's very kindly brought some of his books here, and because this is the kind of launch of it, they are available for you to purchase unless you have another way of doing it. But it would be wonderful if we could say that we had really put him on his way. And that
And
would be
there's
marvellous.
sliding scales, so the cost price is £23.50. I'm asking for 33. To me, it's a sliding scale. You're more than willing to have them for the cost price because I prefer someone to read it than not to read it. And hopefully eventually I'll be able to bring the price down. Anyway. Thank you very much.
Thank
I think
you.
we should give everybody-